stooped down, and the boy had never seen gray hair before. So he touched him on the head with compassion, and the crowd went wild. And that's the person that I know who is a giving, not only to his family and his friends, but gives hope sometimes to the hopeless. And that's the man that I love.
Well, David Wilkins and his family are lifelong friends of my family and me, and I've known him over the years. In fact, he was my page when I was in the Senate. And then when I was governor and all, I watched him grow in the state leadership role as Speaker, of course, for some 11 years and did a wonderful job there. And then the president calls him to Canada. That's one of the most important diplomatic positions that this country has. He did a great job up there, really was key in resolving the softwood lumber dispute. He came back home and went with our law firm, Nelson Mullins, Riley and Scarborough. His son Robert is also in our firm. He's chairman of the International Law Practice Group, David is. And now, of course, he's the chairman of Clemson, again connecting with ICAR and BMW and Michelin and other international connections. I'm so proud of David receiving this award.
One of the most important diplomatic, economic, and military relationships the United States has is with our northern neighbor, Canada. And David was a whirlwind when it came to representing the country, our country in Canada. I think he went to every province a couple of times. He met every man, woman, and child, and he had so much enthusiasm for the relationship between the United States and Canada. He did a terrific job. But my first memory of David being ambassador is that I took a congressional delegation trip to the Yukon region to look at global warming issues with Senator McCain and Senator Clinton. Now, that was at the time an odd duo. It was right before the 2006 when people were talking about the 2008 election. And I remember David showing up. He'd only been an ambassador for about 30 days, I think. And he said, "Is this going to be okay?" And I said, "It's going to be fine." And it was. And we had a great time with David. And the one thing I can say that he and Susan did a terrific job for our country, and everybody in South Carolina ought to be proud.
When I think about David Wilkins, I think about the quintessential statesman and what the legacy that he will leave for South Carolina and for our citizens. When I think about David Wilkins, I think about every speech that he made to the House of Representatives, to the business community, and he started by saying it is the House of Representatives business to be pro-business. And he always focused on creating jobs and wealth for our citizens. What he did for the United States and Canada. I was up there last week, David, and people were still asking me about boiled peanuts and what boiled peanuts were. You left an everlasting legacy as ambassador to Canada from the United States likewise.
Ambassador Wilkins has been a leader in the state of South Carolina, first with the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, then Speaker of the House, and just had a tremendous impact on the laws and the entire fabric of our state and our city. And as ambassador to Canada, we've used him as a real asset to link ourselves with economic opportunities in Canada, and we're very, very appreciative of all that he's done for not only the city of Columbia, but the state of South Carolina, and indeed our nation.
I've known David Wilkins for the last 20 years well, and I watched what he did for South Carolina, and in such a clear way, everything he did leading South Carolina prepared him to represent South Carolina to the whole world as ambassador to Canada. Under his leadership, the House of Representatives was cohesive. They agreed on things. They worked well together. He reached across party lines so very often for the good of this state. And his leadership was extraordinary. But every single thing that he did while he was in the House of Representatives and then as Speaker prepared him to be an ambassador to the world, not only for America, but particularly for South Carolina.
When I think of David Wilkins, I can't think of David without thinking of his lovely wife, Susan, a dear friend, just like David, a remarkable couple. And David, every chance he gets, he talks about Susan and praises her, and I would do so as well. David is a great friend, a true friend. He has been a statesman not only for our state but for our country. He served in so many different capacities at the state level as a House member, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Speaker of the House, and of course Ambassador for America to Canada. And I'm convinced when his career in public service is examined, he will be regarded as one of the great statesmen of our time.
When David and I arrived in Canada, it was as if he always said it was like drinking from a fire hose. There was so much to do, so much to learn, and we just had to jump in with both feet. He made a real point to visit all the military bases in Canada, and I accompanied him with on some of those trips. He related to the soldiers. They admired him so much because they could tell how much he admired them. Over Christmas one year, he went to Afghanistan and visited the troops over there, the Canadian troops who were helping our troops. And he even got to visit some South Carolina troops, National Guard troops who were over there at the time. He came back with even a greater appreciation, and because he was gone over Christmas, when he did get back, I even appreciated him more.
Well, David and I first, I guess, got to know each other when he was Speaker and I was Minority Leader, and that's not the kind of relationship that's typical in producing friendships, but this one did. We became fast friends working together in the House, and at that time, I'm sure neither of us thought or ever expected that we would find ourselves sharing a Christmas together in southern Afghanistan, in Kandahar, in a bunker, while the Taliban were firing Katyusha rockets overhead. And we shared a moment that was on a very special day for us that meant a great deal to us both, and his presence there meant a great deal to me personally. But what I got to witness was him in action as our ambassador, and I saw the work that he did that exemplified the very best of who we are as Americans. And he took this time during Christmas to come there on behalf of our government with the Canadians, to go to places that were in no small measure, they were of significant danger to him. I mean, he went to a place called Fob Wilson, otherwise known as Impact Base Wilson, because of the number of mortars that would hit the base. And while there, he was a visible presence of our country's devotion to the partnership with the Canadians in this important endeavor. And it was amazing to watch. I was very proud to know him. I was very proud of our country that he was our representative. And in a larger sense, but in a personal sense, he made my Christmas.
Having known both Ambassador Royal and Ambassador Wilkins and loved them both and been the beneficiary of both of their leadership styles, I can say their styles are entirely different, and yet their outcomes are the same. They have done so much for this state, for this nation, and although they've done it slightly differently, wouldn't it be wonderful if the whole world viewed South Carolina based on Ambassador Bob Royal and Ambassador David Wilkins?
Bob, you're a good man, and if Thurman were here, you know what he'd say. Bob Royal and David Wilkins are the two finest men who ever wore shoe leather.